Sean Church, he's ex-Agnico. When did you pinch him from there?
So he joined us in March last year, and then our head of environment came across as well, Emma. So she, there's certainly...
They've got a good phone book on them, mate.
They've got a very good phone book. Hence, as I said, our operating relationships are very strong with our counterparties at Agnico in the region, so quite helpful.
This is general advice and my opinions only. This episode's company has paid me for this interview. I may be long, short, or hold an interest in stocks or CFDs mentioned. Past performance isn't reliable. The interviewee's views are their own, not necessarily mine. LEVRD operates as a corporate authorised representative 00131 8377 under AFSL 548573. You can find our financial services guide via the LEVRD website, link in the show notes.
Bag holders and stop loss owners back into gold, the rebound to gold, and the new bloody best jurisdiction in Australia, nearly Northern Territory. Who would have thought we'd say that? PC Gold, ticker PC2, got it on screen here, trading at 92.5. Bloody ComSec market index, sort your shit out and pick up their escrowed stock. The market cap's about 300, not 184. Got the main man, Ash Pattison, on. Welcome to LEVRD, mate. Good to see you again.
You too, Matty. Always great to talk about the territory, mate.
Oh, mate, we're going to get right into it today. I've got it on the map here where your Spring Hill project is. So, mate, before I get into it, I just want to say, think of this as the PC Gold movie. There's a few characters in this. I just sort of, because there's a lot of questions about the royalties, the escrowed stock and everything. This was a private vehicle you held. I've got the board and management up here, and we've got Rivy Gold involved, yourself. Just give us a quick overview of who's who on the board and who vended the project in and how long you have had it.
Yeah, well, look, I guess the most important thing is that the board and management today control 40% of this company. That's been driven by, as you said, the fact that we were private, as a company for 9 years prior to, to bringing the company to the market October last year. We actually acquired the project for cash back in 2016 off another small junior called Thor Exploration. So they'd had the Spring Hill asset non-core, very much chasing other projects in the Northern Territory. And, when the gold price was 1,300 Aussie, it was a pretty big commitment to pay $3.5 million cash to buy the asset. But really between Rivy and Rob Jewson and myself, that was our commitment. Since then, we've obviously bolstered that team and poaching very much from our big brothers that surround us in the region.
So when you say Rivy, because they come up as a 20% shareholder, so that's Kevin and John who I've got on screen here. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So Rivy's a Texas-based private equity fund focusing solely on the precious metal sector. A few investments down in Australia, but a lot of their investments are in North America, South America. Interestingly, a number of the LPs in there are very well-known North American mining, groups that have put their money, behind Kevin and John with a precious metal strategy. So very much a like-minded investor and a great partner in the project.
Okay, gotcha. Right, that sets the scene. Thanks, mate. So I guess your latest news that you've put out, the interim MRE interim, because you got studies and maiden reserve coming up. Take us through it. 1.5 million ounces up in the territory, mate, and probably like the neighbours. And the thing I love about the territory is when gold's back up, good old Mount Todd gets bloody back in the mix. Old Vista Gold down the road. So, what do you got,
It's got to work. Look, we're in a unique position in the belt. We're the only virgin deposit pretty much sitting there that hasn't been historically mined. Every one of those other projects you're looking at on that map are remnant mines. The region produced over 6 million ounces historically. And that's been probably one of the biggest challenges in the region is, the easy ore's gone, the oxide ore's gone in most of those projects. We're a unique little unicorn in the Pine Creek region, 1.5 million ounces in that interim MRE. We're looking at an oxide resource here for, feeding the mill for almost the first 3 years. So quite a unique little project in what is an area known for some very large projects. As you mentioned, Mount Todd, you can never ignore it. It's always, sitting there at 10.5 million ounces. With feasibility studies complete and final permitting underway to get that back into production. In the north, you've got Hang King and their Mount Bundy project. Amazingly, this week they've turned the first sod on that processing plant construction, $550 million commitment. In the northern end of the belt, you've got Petronas very active, 40,000 plus metres of drilling this dry season. You've got Agnico very active for the first time in a number of years, circa 40,000 plus metre program under their belt too. So, the belt's come alive. It's taken time, but, you can't ignore something that's got 20 plus million ounces sitting in the ground.
Yeah, very much so.
And obviously, we'd like to take some credit for this, that we've obviously, by becoming public and very active with the drill bit, we're certainly opening up the doors to the region.
Just the resource, mate, 1.5 million ounces at 1.1, but I guess with the varying cut-off grades, obviously changing the cut-off grade, the grade goes up. Can you take us through like the mineralogy of it and how... Is it one of those deposits, do you have to mine the whole lot? Can you be selective to lift the grade up? Or just looking at, I guess, the purpose of having the different cut-off grades, how much flexibility in the mining will you actually have?
Yeah, look, that cross-section you're showing there is really the key. It is a bulk tonnage system with high-grade domains, and you can see that high-grade domain on the left-hand side of that image, which is primarily the newly discovered link zone and also some high-grade core to our main ore body called the Hong Kong zone. Look, it is very much, as in that long section, you can see there that, it well and truly sits within a $6,000 constrained pit. Which in today's gold price environment really lends to, a large single pit taking the resource. However, we are definitely looking at selective underground mining and taking advantage of some of the historical infrastructure we have at site, i.e. been an old underground mine that, in its day produced some bonanza grades at an ounce per tonne recovered. So we are the PFS is pretty active at the moment in terms of putting that optimal mine structure and mine plan in place between selective underground and open pit mining long term.
So that looking at that cross section there, I see is that all old underground workings or conceptual designs? The faint
that was
grey?
originally there are a couple of different stages of conceptual design. So in the middle of the pit there, you can see the old pit shell at 4650 and then conceptual underground work design, which, was pulling down. I mean, we first tried them, looked to put this into production at 2,900 gold and it worked, 2,900 Aussie gold, and it worked. So, we were sort of showing the evolution of the asset in that slide by, where it worked as an open pit and a larger scale underground back in the day. Now in today's world, obviously it's lending to a much larger scale project and hence, looking at that standalone 3 million tonne per annum CIL plant to feed and process.
I'm sure. So I guess one, because we'll talk about the studies coming up, but one possible scenario, which is I'm sure getting done by the great Shane McClay at NTech. Shout out, Macca, good friend of mine. Yeah. So that high grade domain there on this cross section, so that's about 250, average 200 to 300 metres underground below the surface. So there's a scenario potentially an open pit and then concurrently going into an underground as well, rather than waiting for that. Is that one potential outcome?
Yeah, definitely. It's not in this deck, but we've certainly showed it in the past, the historical underground, and most importantly, a horizontal adit that comes in from the eastern side, 426 metres into the hill. That adit sits 120 metres below surface. So we're waiting literally, imminently for those approvals by the NT government to reopen and refurb that adit. We did daylight it a few months back, and then we've just been waiting for the final approvals to actually ream that out to a 4x4 horizontal decline, and then basically that enables us not only to get back into the previous underground areas, not only for that exploration program, but also it enables NTEC to put some pretty compelling mine plans in place for selective undergrounds, particularly coming down on the hanging wall side of the deposit.
So if that, like, I got it on screen here, that the plan for that adit once you get approvals and rehab it and get in there. So how about what's been taken out of the area already? Like, how many ounces have
the
been
historical
mined?
records show that they produced about 21,000 tonnes, an ounce per tonne recovered. So very selective underground mining, primarily targeting the oxide layer here at Spring Hill.
Yeah,
which again is a beautiful situation for us. It's the oxide layer is approximately 100 metres vertically deep from the top of the mountain down. So the historical mining, and when we talk historical, we're talking the late 1800s, early 1900s, vertical shaft mining. It was exceptionally competent ground. And, the grades, that we are starting to see in some of our more focused drilling and some of our historical drilling certainly, provide, the higher grade zones that can be looked at from the eastern side of the deposit. And then when we talk about this bulk tonnage sheeted vein system, which comprises, mainly Hong Kong and Macau, that sits on the western side of on the hillside. And that's really what the open pit is well and truly targeting.
That your updated MRE, so you got about 66, like about 2/3 of it's indicated now. I got it on screen here, so about 1 million ounces at 1.1. Is that a bit of a thumbsucker what we can expect going into the reserve when it comes out, or is based on what you're saying before, if it's a bulk mining opportunity, a lot of it's going to have to convert? How's that looking from a conceptual base?
Look, we've certainly Cube consulting our geologists and in building this model, and again building it from scratch. Whilst the project's been around for 30 plus years, it's an old Billiton asset, and also Ross Mining. More importantly for local listeners, two quality names used to own this project back in the early 90s. We've been in control of it now for 11 years. Cube have been in working with us since 2023. So they rebuilt this whole model very much with a mine planning focus. They used the LIK methodology to really subdomain this, down to 2.5 metres cubed in the case of the open pit blocks, 1.25 metres cubed in the case of the underground. So, we see our resource model aligning very closely with what a reserve model will look like. All the internal dilution's already been factored into those blocks. So we are, again, committing to putting this thing into production, as opposed to, sitting around drilling it for the next 5 years with, a consistent drill program, which don't get me wrong, the project well and truly justifies being drilled out to determine its true scale potential. But in today's world, having that 1 million plus ounces there and indicated, and still drilling in the inferred today, still converting inferred to indicated with the current drill plan, and still extending the loads. More importantly, that's where the opportunity really sits for the asset.
And that, I guess, with the studies and the full MRE update coming by the end of the year, why the decision to put an interim MRE out mid this year? Was the market sort of needing a bit more clarity on what you actually had? What was the reason?
Look, the previous resource was more than 2 years old, and and again, we've done over 26,000 metres of drilling, since IPO last year. So the time was right to get it out. And feeding that into the PFS is a key requirement for us to then basically be able to revise our permitting today to build the processing plant and tailings infrastructure. So, whilst we could have kept drilling and incorporated, by the end of the year, we're budgeting to have completed close to 70,000 metres of drilling on the asset since listing. And certainly, whilst we weren't drilling blind, obviously it gives us a far more solid platform to look at the economics around this asset. And more to the point, prove what the thing can do production-wise, and really what the true economic benefits are of having a virgin deposit. I don't have to tell you, we're seeing a lot of remnant mines come back to the market, and then there is a big difference between a remnant mine and a virgin deposit. And I'm, looking forward to basically providing that clear evidence and economic outcome of what that difference is in the coming months.
Well, again, I guess the big kicker at the start of the year, by the sounds, the link zone. This is like, correct me if I'm wrong, this was a bit of a game changer for you. It's like one of your 26th of Feb, like 4.5 metres at 28 grams, like for a plus bit of a 1 gram ore body to get a hit like that. Did a lot of people come on board following that, thinking, oh geez, this is story's getting interesting now with a bit of juicy high grade section? I've got it on screen here where the link zone is.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it. Obviously, we used it as a means to obviously fill up the cash as well in terms of that $24 million raise.
Why not?
With new funds coming in, and Rivi even was able to sell down part of its position as a long-term holder to meet demand. The brokers would have loved us to have, slotted away a $60+ million raise, with quality institutions. And in the end, we took 28.5 because that's all I could justify at the time doing. We are talking also to the largest single shareholder, in myself. So, very focused on making sure we're, where the money's spent is well and truly, delivering maximum returns for all shareholders. But look, it has changed the view of the deposit. There's no doubt about it. This is a different mineralised domain. Most of our bulk tonnage domains, stand near vertical, dipping gently to the east. This link zone dips to the west. It's on a different orientation of 10 odd degrees from the main mineralisation. It's certainly one that's, we had intersected in the past, but hadn't really identified the importance of it until obviously that discovery hole that you mentioned. And now that, more importantly, is very visual in terms of what we're seeing. There's a reason why we're very heavy in terms of diamond drilling. 3 diamond rigs on site and 1 RC. It is a very visual domain for that high grade mineralisation. So, but it certainly changed our exploration methodology for the balance of the year. We are chasing grade. We don't need bulk tons. The updated resource has shown that we can feed that plant for 12 or 13 years with bulk tonnage material. Now our exploration approach is very much targeting higher grade additions to that updated MRE, due out by the end of the year. A nice Christmas present for everyone.
So, is it realistic to think you'll have by then access to the adit and possibly some extra holes into that link zone, or not?
Look, we're still drilling the link zone from surface. So 2 of the diamond rigs today are still targeting the link and extensions. Extending the strike, most importantly, infilling to appease, certainly Cube's review of that domain. We're now, we must have another 13 or 14 holes completed already into that link zone post the MRE update. So, there's a lot of exciting news to still come out into the market. Yep. Visually, we've obviously put out some of the fantastic looking core that has a lot of visible gold in it, and no lenses required. This is coarse gold in that link zone in particular. But in terms of the underground adit, we've got a draft contract on our desk for the underground contractors to go in and a specialised underground contractor to get in there and to ream that adit out and to put the drill cuddies in, and certainly obviously engage with our drilling partners to look at the underground fleet to go in there. So, more importantly for us also, we do deal with monsoonal seasons up there, as we saw this year, just gone with the wettest wet season in 30 years. So most importantly for the drillers, they won't get soggy boots this wet season. They'll be in their Wellingtons underground, hopefully. So,
mate, you get soggy boots there anyway, piss and sweat. Trust me, you got mate. I remember Telfer. I never stepped in a puddle and just be full of water, sweat in me boots. So Northern Territory will be the same.
Yeah, the humidity is the killer. That's well and truly.
Apologies, I undercalled your discovery hole. The actual discovery hole was 25 metres at 36.8 grams. So we don't.
Yeah.
Mate, you don't want to pay. You don't want to pay for this shit and not have the bloody best hole assay on there. Because this is the interesting part with that extensional drilling. Considering you've got the interim MRE, so is there a lot like for the MRE update at the end of the year? There's possibly going to be some additional higher grade link zone material that's going to come out, because I think because your link zone's coming back at 1.1 million tonne at 5.37 grams, so 193,500 ounces just in the link zone. So,
and that is a very tight domain. Cube were very harsh on the hard boundaries of that domain. So for us internally, we're certainly infilling that domain. Plus, as I said, more importantly, long strike extensions, and then both up and down dip extensions. So that is certainly the focus is very much on that link zone. It doesn't take a lot of tonnes in the scheme of our global resource to add very meaningful ounces, as we saw with the addition.
Yeah.
In the interim MRE.
Speaking of adding ounces, the Chrysos collaboration for the photon assays. Take us through what you've been going through there, because you see very high grade hits like this, and photon. Correct me if I'm wrong. Photon assays are good for nuggety deposits.
Definitely
good for not missing nuggets that you might get in a fire assay. What's been the use in this collaboration and the bit of a grade uplift on re-assaying, and I guess what's the plan going forward?
Yeah, look, certainly the Chrysos technology has been a game changer for us and many others. It's if you try and get assays into a photon assay lab around Australia at the moment, the lead times are 5, 6, 7 weeks. For Spring Hill, yes, it's a large disseminated system, but it has a lot of coarse gold. We see coarse gold in probably 40% of our drill holes. So capturing that coarse gold and that true effect on the resource has always been a challenge. When you look back through some of our historical metallurgical test work, we've had situations where just the gravity gold alone was reporting higher than the fire assay, let alone the reconciled met. So, we were capturing what we've found is the bigger the sample size, the far more representative of this deposit. And going from a 50 gram charge on fire assay to a 500 gram pot for photon has delivered meaningful outcomes, but we still, and Chrysos, more to the point, still firmly believe we're undercalling the grade by virtue of not sampling enough. And that's what the photon technology is enabling us and our peers to do, is actually to be grabbing, for not a great deal more cost, you can actually be sampling 1 kilo or 1.5 kilos per sample off a rig and getting a far more representative outcome for a deposit. So we've seen it definitely in the assays we've been reporting, a much higher grade and the discovery of things like the Macau link zone and even other parts of the Macau ore body to the north. We're seeing elevated grades in those areas. But then what it's also done, Matty, which is what we underestimated, was it's actually pulled a heap of tonnes up from the lower grade, the below the 0.5 gram cutoff in the past, brought that up into mineralised inventory.
Yep.
So that, we've seen our tonnes in the 0.5 gram cutoff, move from 25 million tonnes up to, 43 million tonnes in this MRE update. So yes, there is definitely an improvement in grade as a result of using photon, but it's actually brought a truckload of tonnes up that were previously sitting there as mineralised waste into the mineralised inventory today.
It's good making more gold without even mining it. That's the fun part, isn't it?
Yeah, it's nice to be using modern technology to absolute benefit.
The map, the neighbours, I guess the big neighbour I want to talk about is not something we talk about in Australia too much. Agnico Eagle, so Union Reefs, 26 kilometres away. So you're this little stamp here, or not a stamp, but on the screen it is that orange stamp, and you got Union Reefs to the sort of the southeast, 26 k's away. 2.4 million tonne CIL plant, and it's idle. And I think Spring Hill processed 13,000 tonnes back in 2017 through that joint, got 97% recovery. I guess, what do you know about them? What do you know about that joint?
Look, they're obviously the second most valuable gold company in the world today, so an amazing performer. The NT, was certainly not their primary asset or reason for being in Australia. Fosterville in Victoria, well and truly the high-grade story underground, but, a large system that was, produced plus 400,000 ounces a year on a regular basis, was certainly their main focus. This year, we're seeing a much more aggressive exploration campaign from Agnico in the local region. We do have a very good operating relationship with them, both, from an Australian level and a Canadian level. So, we do have plenty of dialogue around why that plant is of use to us and them. And, they're not only do they own that plant, they own 3 million ounces in the region. That's probably the more sort of unbelievable part of the equation and discussion is, well, what are you actually doing with those ounces? So yes, don't get me wrong. We've certainly had plenty of discussion back and forwards. Whether we lease that plant, whether we do it as a toll milling arrangement. Whether there's consolidation opportunities either way. But from our perspective today, we've been having those discussions for 5 years, and the best outcome for PC Gold shareholders is to push this asset as fast as possible, keep growing it. I mean, they've done an amazing favour to me and the team in that, when we first started talking to them about Spring Hill, they actually had it under option, believe it or not, back in 2019 to buy Spring Hill. At that point in time, the resource was 300,000 ounces. So they've, I guess, the delays or slowness in having discussions have been very much, allowed us to drill the asset and actually create, obviously, very meaningful value for all of our shareholders. I still believe there's a natural play between us and them one way or the other, and the fact that they have 1.5 million ounces sitting that close to that plant, whether it be the plant in its current form, whether it be the plant as the brand new bigger plant, whatever the case may be. You can't ignore the logistics of this region. We're 2.5 hours south of Darwin. Spring Hill's only 10 kilometres off the Stewart Highway. They've got a 4 kilometre bitumen road into their plant. It's on mains power. Tailings is, not a problem for 10 plus years. It's a wet tailings dam in the old pit. So a lot of the challenges that remote operations face, you don't face in this region. And there's lots of pros and cons, but, obviously our intent is to push our own wheelbarrow as hard as we can. And then if something happens, something happens.
Are they doing anything with that plant? I know it's idle, but when you're talking about the new plant, are they planning to do anything with it, or is it all on ice at the moment?
They're certainly doing bare bones maintenance on it, structural, most importantly.
Yeah.
But there's no, in terms of ore sources to that plant, the only permitted ore sources that can actually deliver any material to Union Reef are ourselves and further north Petronas. So there's only really 2 sources of material that are permitted today that can actually feed that plant. So, from their perspective, they can sit on the assets. That's probably the biggest negative of the NT. They've fixed all the other problems up there. Royalty, onerous royalty structures have been resolved. They've got a very pro-government that is pro-mining and pro-resources, and we're well and truly seeing the current government push the barrow very hard on new projects coming online. But for for that processing, for all the good. Probably the biggest negative is that in the Northern Territory on a mining license, you can actually sit on it and you can actually expend no money, and that's enabling and has always enabled parties in the Northern Territory to land bank.
Yeah, righto. Yeah.
So it's certainly not a focus. Key priority, I wouldn't think, but I'll never say never in this gold price environment.
What your CEO, Sean Church, he's ex-Agnico. When did you pinch him from there?
So he joined us in March last year, and then our head of environment came across as well, Emma. So she, there's certainly
they got a good phone book on them, mate.
They got a very good phone book. Hence, as I said, our operating relationships are very strong with our counterparties at Agnico in the region. So quite helpful. But certainly, again, from knowing that region, and Peter Harris was the same. 5 years with Vista. Pete's been involved in pretty much every asset you can see on this slide. He's drilled it. He's drilled most of them before they were even mined. So he's got 30 plus years experience in the Pine Creek, Oregon. So the team that we've assembled to take Spring Hill into production is an exceptional team that understands the NT and how to operate in the NT, most importantly, and come with some very good pedigree, most importantly.
Before we get on the pathway to development, mate, the TerraCore, the land grab there, where's that in relation to where Spring Hill is?
Yeah, so it was quite strategic to put it. It comes down into that blob there. I do need to update that map looking at it. It's a tenement package that was owned by two pretty well-known mining guys in the territory. One with actually a lot of past government experience as well. So, that area, as you can see there on that image, to the north of the mining licence is obviously the more strategic part of that tenement package. It just gives us that contiguous along strike and parallel structure targeting, certainly. And then wrapping down to the east, it's probably more strategic in that it all. If I showed you the ultimate tenement owners in this region, pretty much we're surrounded by Agnico Eagle. So it was an opportunity to grab a circa 80 square kilometre tenement package. There's a couple of little small mines in there excluded. One of them which is owned by Agnico in the south, and the other one is owned by a private individual out to the northeast. So certainly. There's certainly enough smoke there to be of interest to us. LIDAR has just recently been flown over it, reinterpret that LIDAR's ongoing before we start to really look at it. But more importantly, it was just giving us that contiguous package that, takes us now out to sort of just under 200 square kilometres of ground. In saying that, we've got 4 rigs turning and all inside the mining lease boundary, and we still think the mining lease itself's well underdone. So it was certainly a nice to have and an opportunistic acquisition.
Yeah. No, very good. I think we've covered most of the PFS anyway. Like, essentially, it's due in the fourth quarter. NTEC are doing it. Shane McClay, if you're listening, actually, I've finally taken your advice and had Monday to Thursday off the piss. He's been on me for years, and I achieved it this week. He should be proud. So I guess the one I wanted to ask about that, the permitting wise. So you said like you got federal Northern Territory sort of environmental permits for the open pit mining, but not included in that would be like a 3 million tonne CIL plant and tailings dam, which you're proposing. So what would be involved in getting that approval? And I guess does that more lean you towards, geez, it'd be good to get a hold of Agnico's mill?
Oh, look, I guess the permitting process, you're right. I mean, we're a fully permitted site today for open pit mining on the basis that we truck the ore to Union Reef. That's both state and federal approvals. Variation of the permitting is required, to build the processing plant and tailings dam infrastructure and increase the footprint for mining in today's world as opposed to the previous open pit mine plans that were presented, and approved back in 2021. So The Fed timetable is prescribed at 100 business days to vary that permitting. The NT government one is sitting at around 220 odd days. However, that's totally in control of the Chief Minister and her departments. This is a key development asset for the NT. You've got to bear in mind today there's only 7 producing mines in the Northern Territory, albeit, some of the biggest mines in Australia. We've had 3 new mines approved in the last 6 weeks to 8 weeks, with Henking, Arafura, and obviously Bill Beaumont and Develop and Core going back into the underground at Finnis. We're seeing a lot of local government support and interaction to make things happen very quickly. And more importantly for us, I think, the next election in the Northern Territory is in August 2028. So this will be front and centre on the agenda for, things that need to be well and truly in the construction phase and permitted by that point. And getting back to your comments about Entech, we've been working with Entech on this asset for 11 years. They did the original due diligence for us when we bought the project. But we certainly surround ourselves with the right names. GRES obviously on the plant, and study manager. You've got Entech involved, you've got SLR Consulting involved, and more importantly, Cube from a resources perspective. So we're
promoting it on LEVRD.
Yeah, and well and truly promoted. Thank you.
Mate, the balance sheet, got it on screen. You finished with 21.7 million. I think you went through about 4 last quarter. So the funds are looking good for the drilling you got coming up. I wanted to get into the royalties. So because you've got a 5% NSR to Rivi. And you've got a 2% buyback on that. And there's also a $14 an ounce royalty to Franco Nevada and Carthew when it's above 1,500 Aussie, which is going to be hopefully for your case forever. How much that buyback, the 2% that you can buy back? What are the terms on that?
So we've got the option to buy that back for 3 years from listing. So October 29, we've got up until, October 28, I should say, we can exercise that option to buy that 2% NSR back for 24 million Aussie.
Okay, yeah.
Very cheap, logical decision to make in this current gold price environment. 3% would be the net to Rivi, as you said, point whatever works out today in today's gold price environment, 0.02% or something to Franco, who are not happy with the fixed dollar royalty that has been around for a long time.
How'd that come about?
It stemmed from the original acquisition of the asset. It was owned originally by Thor Exploration when we bought the asset, and then they've transferred through a couple of different royalty companies through baskets of gold royalties being sold, and then Franco have ended up with it as the hopefully the final holder. But again, they're watching pretty closely with what we're doing with Spring Hill.
In what way? They're looking potentially to buy the royalty off Rivi, or?
Well, that's obviously a discussion to be had between them, but certainly I think the scale of this asset it's quite, you've seen how aggressive they are in what they did with MI6, biggest royalty deal ever done in Australia. So there's not a lot of scope to do anything here, I don't think, with our current royalty bank, it's quite palatable with the buyback. The state royalty is 3.5%, so looking at sort of 6.5 to 6% is a big enough royalty to deal with state royalties and third parties. But certainly, the scale potential of this asset is what's catching the interest of a lot of financiers generally. We were certainly busy at Diggers on the booth, and that was because we were pretty unknown. And then when people sort of looked at the scale potential, it became pretty evident. There's big financings happening one way or the other in the medium term.
Is that royalty, the 5% for Rivi, was that part of the IPO process, or was that?
No, it was actually part of our original acquisition of the asset. So when we bought the asset privately 11 years ago, they provided the lion's share of the financing at the time, along with the founding equity guys. And then, that royalty was part of that financing structure from back then. So, again, it was a lot easier to agree to a royalty structure at 1,300 Aussie, a bit different today at 6,100.
Yeah, mate. Next, I think between the study and everything coming up end of the year, I guess what's the most immediate news flow we can expect after this?
Look, there's still a lot of exploration news flow coming through. We're literally on the death knock of finalising all the updated network for life of mine, which is obviously a very material announcement to come out of the standalone pre the PFS. That approval on refurb of the adit is also key, in getting the guys on the ground to start that work. So, and then looking at that PFS release, sort of mid-November, and then updated resource, as I said, for the nice Christmas present that we hope to deliver to everyone. So, it is a very busy 4 months ahead.
Yeah. Did you say once Rivy sold some of their share, the Rivy fellas sold a bit of their shares, you're the top shareholder now?
That's right, top individual, that's correct, yeah.
Very good, mate. Well, I am rooting for you. I hope it bloody goes well, mate, because, this is thanks for a very, very detailed overview. The first one always is. And, look forward to having you back on and check the progress of this because, mate, she is all happening in the NT. So, mate, best of luck, and she's got a good platform for you. So, well bloody done.
Indeed, Matty. Well, it's always great to talk about it. I can talk about it forever, to be honest.
Yeah, mate, if I had that much of a lick of it too, I would be as well. Good on you, Ash, mate. Thanks for getting levered, mate. We will chat again soon.
Okay, thanks, Matty.
Cheers, mate.